Sorry. Sorry. Woo. Yeah. Woo. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. Secure Digital Life is joining you. Today we're going to talk about packet sniffing, among other things that get sniffed. And Russ and I will be telling you all about it. So stick around.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. And you type in AAA porn or whatever it is you're typing in. I'm sorry. I was at a PG show.
And I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad you're here because somebody needs to know what's going on.
That's right.
Okay, so now
somebody has to drink this.
I think it's another day. It's another episode.
Yeah, he's looking at the wrong camera.
You put my camera over here. Cut. Basically, forget you ever saw that. I think actually forgetting you ever saw that would really be a good idea at this point. B-Sides, Connecticut in Southington, which I finally learned how to pronounce after lots of time with a dialogue coach, which got me to be able to say that like a real Connecticut or a
Connecticut
or something. They used to call them Michiganders, so I don't know. A Coloradoan, which you can no longer say in Colorado because weed is legal, so nobody ever gets all through the whole thing. Now they just call them like Colorado. But okay, but that's coming up on Saturday. We're going to be there, so I'm going to be there.
You're gonna be there.
So me and the crew will be at B-Sides in Southington, so you should be there too because it should be cool. B-Sides is always a cool thing. It's lots of fun. Wild West Hackin' Fest. Russ is going to actually make me get up at like some kind of ridiculous hour, like 4 o'clock in the morning to catch a flight so he can fly a drone up somebody's nose at Mount Rushmore or something like that. So we're all going to go to jail. So you may get to see that live too, but we're going to do that on October 27th. We will be live at Wild West Hackin' Fest. So you should come to Wild West Hackin' Fest if you can, and if not, you can tune in and see some of the antics and be sad because you weren't there, so kind of thing. Today we want to talk about packet sniffing, and I remember the first time I sniffed a packet.
I sniffed one this morning.
Oh, yeah. It's like, but I really do. And I remember way back then, and we started fooling with this because I was just interested in it. And at the time, everybody used what's called flat networks back then. So this was back in like the late 90s when computers were wood burning mostly. And
or hamster wheel.
Yeah, also we had a pterodactyl that ran on a little belt and it kept it going and said it's a living. But if you don't get that, well, too bad. But basically, when we had flat networks, all these networks were what were called hub-based, and so the Cisco term of the broadcast domain was very extensive because there weren't many people on the networks. And so those early TCP networks that everybody was using were very limited in broadcast domains, so everybody could see everything. Mm-hmm. And you could literally just plug into the network, and you could actually start to and I did that. I wrote a tool with C++, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, a typical hub would just take one packet and like distribute it to all.
Right.
Ports,
I mean, a hub is just a gadget that literally is like an extension cord. So everybody that's plugged into it sees everything. So it just spreads the traffic. And I mean, if you go to like 97 or 98, most networks had 4 or 5 people on them. Mm-hmm. I mean, there might be a printer out there somewhere, but it probably wasn't network enabled. You would sometimes there would be like a system or something, a server out there somewhere that you might see, but there's very little traffic, and people weren't in any way conscious of security back then. I mean, that was the days when security was truly the Wild West, and there was not really any focus on it at all.
The way I describe it in class is like it's standing in a store, like a CVS or a drugstore or something like that, and there's maybe 5, 10, 15 people around, and there's a little bit of noise if all of them are talking. All you have to do is just sit and listen to a single conversation.
Exactly.
Right? That's all you need. And then once you tune in.
And eavesdropping is another term for doing this. And in fact, today, when you talk about packet sniffing, it includes Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. And unlike wired communications, which are more difficult to sniff today, which I'll tell you about in a minute, Wi-Fi is very easy to sniff for the most part because it's just being sent over the airwaves. So yeah, and it's all around us right now because every gadget in this room is somehow Wi-Fi enabled or some kind of enabled, whether it's Bluetooth or it's Wi-Fi or it's something else. All that's going on right at this very moment, and because of that, it means we can sniff those. And that's usually called snarfing, by the way. You'll hear or snorting. You hear people say air snort and some of the products like that. So basically, packet sniffing means I'm going to reach out and I'm going to grab frames, and frames are the entire layer 2 packet. So that's the whole thing. So that's the source, the destination, the MAC addresses, all that stuff is in that frame. And that layer 2 frame contains both the data payload and the layer 3 information as well, if you know where to look for it. So basically what happens is in the old days, you had to actually go out and dissect these packets. So you catch them, and there's just this big giant wall of bits coming at you. And what has to happen is you had to go through that big collection that you've gotten off the wire and write a piece of code that looks for the headers and footers and trailers and all these kind of pieces of the packet, which means you'd have a lot of knowledge of the various pieces on the network. You've done this.
Oh yeah, I do it with the Mac. Like Mac has built-in software, but nowadays it's not written in plain text anymore, right? It should be encrypted.
Right.
So it's you need to what's AES 128 or something like that.
But I want to talk about that for a second because I want to talk about what in the clear means. You just heard Russ say plain text, and I want to tell you about that. I'm going to point at you while I do. The internet itself was based around ASCII 2. I mean, it literally is based around 8-bit byte traffic. So that means everything was sent in characters over the internet. And it was sent what is called in the clear. So all the old protocols, HTTP, Telnet, FTP, SMTP, all those protocols which everybody used on the internet, especially back then before they started adopting new protocols, was sent in the clear. And that meant if you grabbed a data frame off the wire, very likely both all the header information, so that means the source MAC address, the destination MAC address, the source TCP IP port, the source the IP addresses, all that was in the clear, but the data payload was in the clear too.
Yep.
That meant if
keystrokes, so on and so forth, passwords,
and so literally, if you jumped on there, what you would see on something like that, when I would grab packages, if you were looking for things, you could just see a character at a time in each of those data frames. So you'd see that 8-bit character or sometimes more than one, depending on the protocol, in those data frames. And what that did to you was it meant that anybody could just go out and they could grab these packets. And we were doing this a lot. So we were going on there and we were doing this with these hub-based networks. And we're going to talk about some of the ways that people do this stuff as well so that you can get involved with that. Do you have a basic strategy for sniffing?
Well, like I said, we just use the wire. I think it's called the Wi-Fi analyzer on the Mac. It's built in. You just use the search. Whatever, I forget. Oh, Finder. Use Finder and type in Wi-Fi or wireless analyzer, and it comes up. And one of the things is sniff, and you can just turn it on. It outputs to a text file right on your desktop.
Wow.
And then you just open it up and.
So here's the way that the physical setup for this worked, and then I'm going to tell you about how it works now because both these things are still viable. So originally, what was going on was a hub was there, and you just literally had to plug a device into the hub. So you took a cable and you plug it into some hub somewhere on the building, and you could literally see the entire university. I remember the first time I did this at a university, I plugged it in, and I could see all the traffic for the whole school. That hub was a very, very vulnerable device, and those have faded away. We don't see them very much today. You also need then something, NIC, that is put into what is called promiscuous mode.
Ooh,
and I know they love that word too. I was just in this Cisco class over the weekend, and they have these promiscuous switch modes and all these things, but it doesn't mean what you think. It's
it means it listens. It listens very well.
But yeah, it means that it's listening instead of just sending and receiving. It actually is listening to all the traffic. Now, move that forward to today. Today we use switched networks. So layer 2 switching means never having to say you're sorry.
Especially after being promiscuous.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But layer 2 switching means that you create virtual circuits between two communicators. So that means the person on one end and the other end are connected with a virtual circuit. Yeah, this is getting a little more R-rated now. I think
keep your cable away from
we're at
my
PG-13. We're going to go for PG-14 in a few minutes. So it's like, but Switching at that level means that other people on that switch can't necessarily see that traffic. And that was the idea of layer 2 switching, not because of security, but in order to reduce traffic. So all those kind of problems and data collisions that happen with hubs got reduced with switching, and that's why everybody wanted to go to it. Security meant switching was a little more effective because with security switching, all of a sudden you actually can isolate those individual ports. And there's all kinds of things in commercial smart switches like Cisco switches that you can set. And they teach whole classes in switching security and how you set up each port and how you should do all these things to prevent VLAN hopping and all kinds of weird attacks that you'll see. But for sniffing approaches, what this is called span mirroring. So by doing span mirroring on a switch, it tells the switch to actually redirect all the switch traffic to a single port on that switch. And so if you know how to set that up. Now, a lot of people don't. Or if you're doing bad things, which you should, no bad things, no bad things. If you're doing that kind of thing, what people will do, and what we did in pen test, was just literally take a hub that you could buy today, and you can go buy these on any site, that Amazon or Newegg or anywhere. Buy a little cheap $5 switch or a hub. And these are just dumb hubs, and you take them and you put them in front of the router. So if you put that in front of somebody's router and then you just plug the inbound connection in and the outbound connection in, you will see all the traffic on that, and you put your laptop in the back, put it in promiscuous mode, and it will start collecting traffic. I hope you have a large hard drive because if it's any kind of a business of significance, you're getting a massive amount of traffic right there. I prefer to put my sensor, which is what this is called, behind the router because I'm seeing internal traffic then instead of all the internet probes and scans and things. But it depends on what your objective is.
I like my sensor behind too, but especially not if it's promiscuous.
Oh, this is getting worse and worse. Yeah. Okay. I told you I was going to get the PG-14. So you need, if you are under the age of 21, you need parental approval. So kids, go get mom's approval to continue watching from this point. But so let's talk a little bit about some of the old stuff and how it was identified. So what's your favorite TCP protocol then?
Oh, I like 80 for web.
Okay, Russ likes 80. I like
25.
I like Telnet. I like port 23 Telnet, and this is and I like 80 too. I mean, everybody likes 80. The only problem with port 80 today, we can talk about a little bit when you're doing sniffing, is well, you should tell us about how are websites protected from sniffing attacks today?
So websites are protected by using things like SSL or other types of HTTPS secure, and they use different types of protocol. What is it, 8080 for HTTPS? And then there's also firewalls, like that prevent the
well, that doesn't really prevent sniffing because sniffers are inside your network. So the firewall doesn't necessarily prevent it. IPS might prevent it. The problem with sniffing is it's very difficult to detect because it's passive. Yeah. So that means you're just listening. So it really is like eavesdropping. So if I'm just sitting there with a glass up against a hotel room wall listening to what the people in the next room are doing, it's very difficult for them to know that I'm actually doing that in my room unless I give them some sort of overt sense that I'm doing that. So I actually start taking action on it. I like Telnet because Telnet was traditionally used for administrators to connect to servers. And if I simply go on my network and I know which field, and I do, where the port information is. So if I look in that packet, and you can look this up on Wikipedia or anywhere, just look up what a layer 2 data frame looks like, or in this case, layer 3. You'll see the field in there where the port information is stored. And that's a 16-bit field that has port information in it. And when you see the number 23, you know that's a packet you like. And when you see packets going to port 23, and then this is why you see hackers and script kiddies in the world scanning you all the time looking for port 23. They want to find Telnet services because they're sent in the clear. If I can go out and get you on that, I can see a login because now I can search through my giant collection of trash. I can search for LOGIN because if I find a packet, even with just an L and an O in it, the next few packets are very likely going to say PASSWORD, and right after that is that person's password. And you love to see something. Here's my favorite one ever. You see LOGIN : ROOT. And the next set of packets right after that with 23 on them were password and the password after that. And I had that when I got that, I got the admin's root password. And this was not like, this was like at a university, not in Rhode Island. It wasn't Roger Williams. This was a long, long time ago. But I got the root password for a server. Well, guess what? That admin and all the other admins used the same password and the same login for every server they had, including the grade server. That's how I got a college degree.
And nowadays, it doesn't have to be an actual human behind that, right? Those services some of them require root access as well. So they would have like backdoors, but they're still transmitted through packets.
And they may actually be using Telnet, because remember, Telnet doesn't have to be an active. It can be scripted into a piece of code. And this is one of the things I really will advise you about. When you run apps and you run tools on your networks, if you don't know how those things work, then this is why you might be doing packet sniffing, because you want to see what those tools are actually doing. And that tool could well be using Telnet as a way to connect between a database server and something else. And it literally could do that. And you don't know it. And it's logging in as root from one server to the other. And when you set it up, you put in root and you put in the root password, and it's just being sent in the clear. And some sniffer out there can grab that. And people can do this. They can literally walk in your organization with a toolbox. And in that toolbox, they can have a really small, like an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi that's connected to a removable hard drive. They can literally put that up over a ceiling tile where you've got a switch setting, and they could put a hub in there and just unplug that trunk port and plug it into the hub, and the switch may not know the difference if it's not a very good switch and it's not been configured correctly. And suddenly they can come back 3 days later and they can dump your whole network for days and days and days and see, and then they go through and they search. And that was why we like that. Now, HTTP, early on, HTTP was a huge threat because HTTP itself is sent in the clear. So now I'm just searching for port 80. Well, guess what? You want to log into a bank. So go back in 2003 or 2004, and you had one of those early banking services. If I was sniffing and I see port 80 and I see Bank of America going across a packet stream in HTTP, guess what else is coming? Login. Yep. I got your bank account, your login. Now today, like Russ said, that has all been shifted off to secure ports. So you'll still see that HTTP traffic, but now that HTTPS traffic on the back end is running on a different port. It's encrypted. So that means that asymmetric encryption, you probably heard that term, which means there's a public and a private key pair, is running on the back end, and those pieces of the web page that really matter are encrypted, and all you're going to get is the public stuff you could have got by going to CNN.com, and you would have seen the same information out there in front of you. Other services. Do you have any other services you like?
Let's see. Well, POP3, IMAP, so 110, 25 SMTP.
Guess what?
43.
Every one of those Russ just said is sent in the clear, even today. SMTP, that's how you send email. So if you send email and you get sniffed, and in that email you wrote, use the login and password, and you put that in that email, and the person is sniffing, and it goes to SMTP, they will get it because it's not encrypted, and it's coming from your machine in the clear. Same thing, POP3 is how you get email. Same thing, in the clear. What's the other? IMAP. God, it's like, I got it. Yeah, this is like, I knew I shouldn't have been sniffing all that. Yeah. But all those kind of services also. FTP. How many of you still use FTP, File Transfer Protocol, and how many programs still use it? I see it all the time. This thing is a nightmare, folks. It is a terrifying piece of equipment. It's like Telnet. And FTP is sending whole files in the clear. So if you're sending spreadsheets over FTP or you have a tool that's doing that, those are being sent in the clear. And admittedly, sniffing those is a little bit challenging, but I'm really looking to get your passwords. And if your FTP has to log in, that's being sent in the clear as well. And all these services, every single thing we've mentioned here, has a secure counterpart, every single one of them. And you can encrypt that entire transaction stream to prevent people from sniffing it.
So SFTP, SSL, those types of things.
So basically, as you get started in this, because next show we're going to actually look at doing this. So I'm going to set up some things, and we're going to look at some Wireshark.
We'll do a live packet sniff too.
Yeah, and we'll do a live packet sniff. Russ is going to do the sniffing. I'm just going to do I'm going to be the sniffy. But, yeah, it smells like cinnamon. Check it out. What is it? It tastes like cinnamon. That's how they used to get people to lick the flagpole. It was like, it's like if it's like cold, cinnamon. You lick it, it tastes like cinnamon. And people do it. Yeah, but so all that stuff actually works. Today, if you try to set this up, remember that if you're on a switch network, the only traffic you're going to see is yours. So that in that way, you're kind of safe from getting in any kind of, because we want to talk a little bit about the legal problems with this as well. But we also talk about Wi-Fi. air snorting is something that people do. And it's a very dangerous thing in terms of you losing information. So and we've talked about this on the show before, when you use Wi-Fi, when you use cellular, any of these things, they can theoretically be sniffed because it is in the airwaves. So if you're on your hotel's Wi-Fi system, you're on your school's Wi-Fi system, if it's not password protected and encrypted, and you're not using a VPN, it's very conceivable that I am air snorting you literally by just setting them in the corner. So if you go into Starbucks and you're using their Wi-Fi, it's in the clear. And if you don't encrypt things on your machine, if you're not using a VPN and you're using these open services, people literally just sitting in the Starbucks with no way to detect it are just sitting there eavesdropping on all the conversations that are going on. And that is a huge problem. Now, this stuff is illegal. I mean, it's illegal. I won't use any swears. We're trying to get back under the rating cap now because we're getting to the point where we might as well just go for full frontal nudity. That's coming soon. But federally in the United States, just to let you know, this stuff is considered wiretapping. That is a big charge, and they can charge you with it. So if you're a hacker or you're that kind of person and you're doing this, like I said, it's hard to detect, but if someone catches you doing it, then they literally could charge you with illegal wiretapping operations, which can get you put into federal prison.
Federal PITA prison.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't know what that means, send us an email or go watch Office Space, and they will explain. It's like in the last 5 minutes, so you'll be good to go. But you can get in trouble with this on your company network. So if you do set your NICs in promiscuous mode, there are tools that can send out queries to find promiscuous NICs in the network, and you should be doing that if you're not. Because they catch you, they may fire you. You can get terminated as an employee for doing sniffing. Like I say, today the amount of data you get from this kind of sniffing stuff is more limited because it's harder to do and so forth. But if you're trying to pen test yourself, this is a great way to get started with this. So a couple of tools I want to mention to you right up front. Russ, what was the tell them the Mac tool again?
Oh, wireless analyzer.
So wireless analyzer.
Wi-Fi analyzer.
Wi-Fi analyzer. Yep. The tool I prefer for this is called Wireshark. And Wireshark is available to you for free. I'm going to show it to you in the show next week so you can see it. It's an important tool to learn because you will get shown Wireshark information. I know people that go to job interviews and they lay Wireshark information in front of you and say, show me the three-way TCP handshake. Show me here a connection to port 80 and just circle it. And so knowing what Wireshark looks like, because it's really gathering all this stuff together. Now today, Wireshark is so sophisticated that I saw it do something that's just absolutely shocking and amazing. It was on a real-world job I had. We were actually scanning with legal, so we were scanning the network, looking for things. I was capturing traffic. We were just trying to figure out what was going on in the network. I was capturing VoIP. Okay, so if you don't know what VoIP is, it's phone traffic. So Cisco phones, Vonage, all these internet-based phones use VoIP, and so which is called SIPs and skinnies, or all these different kind of packet types. And I saw all these VoIP packets. And oh, you guys have your phone traffic dumped into your regular network, and he was like, "Well, yeah, it's no big deal." Wireshark, look at this. Listen, Wireshark, not only did I have the traffic, Wireshark took the VoIP packets, reconstructed the voice conversations, and turned them into files I could listen to.
No way.
I actually had one side of the conversation, and I could have got both sides if I had done a little further sniffing. Wow. I literally could listen to the conversation that was going on. It had the telephone number that was called, and I could listen to the audio, and I'll show you that.
That is so cool.
And that was with Wireshark, a free tool. Now, you can buy commercial tools to do this too. They're often called protocol analyzers. I know they used to cost a crazy amount of money because I was at a company once and they were showing me this protocol analyzer they had bought from a major concern. And he said it cost $60-something thousand. And I was like, wow, what does it do? And he was like, well, it analyzes protocols, like, hence the name. But I was like, okay, what does that mean exactly? And he was like, well, you plug into the network and it collects traffic. And then it goes through and organizes the traffic into bit buckets that are organized by ports and types and all these things. And then you can go through there and look at the traffic. And I was like, so you mean like Wireshark? And he was like, I guess. Who makes that? And I was like, I don't know, but it's free. And he was like, it's free? And I was like, yeah, you just throw it on a laptop and put a big hard drive on it and plug it in the network, you're good to go, and it'll organize it. Wireshark will organize all this. It will let you trace through conversations, meaning that TCP interactions. Wow. It will let you organize it so you just see that traffic. Will show you every piece of information. You can blow up the contents of the packets, and you'll see that. I know I'm really giving a sales pitch for it, but we're gonna do that. So I want you to look at it. It may take 2 shows to actually go through that, because I want to do one just to introduce you to it, and then we'll do one where we're actually going to do. We'll try to do some live stuff with it too. We can set up maybe 2 weeks out, but. So we're going to do that next time. So I hope you'll tune in and see us do more sniffing, snorting, and snarfing.
Smell like cinnamon.
It smells like cinnamon to me. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye.